The Israeli government calling on Donald Trump to intervene ahead of a vote on a UN resolution condemning its settlement activity. I'm joined now by CNN Global Affairs correspondent Elise Labott. Elise, good evening. Thank you for coming on tonight. This has been an extraordinary day centering around a UN vote about Israel. Tell us what happened.
Well, basically, Don, the U.S. has been planning to vote on this UN resolution, UN Security Council resolution, condemning Israeli settlement activity, calling it illegal. Usually the U.S. for years has kind of protected Israel with its veto power at the UN Security Council, but we understand that President Obama was prepared to let that resolution pass either by abstaining or voting in favor of it. The Israelis have been watching what's been happening for weeks. They've been warning the Obama administration not to do that, imploring them really, and said, listen, if you don't stop this resolution, if you plan on letting it go ahead, we're going to have no choice but to reach out to President-elect Trump. And an Israeli official told me that's just what the Israeli government did. They did reach out to the president-elect, asked him to intervene. You saw today President-elect Trump issuing a statement calling on the U.S. to veto this resolution, saying it was not helpful to Israel. And we do understand that there was a call between President-elect Trump and Egyptian President Fattah el-Sisi, who offered the resolution in the first place. And after all this flurry of diplomatic activity, the Egyptians ended up pulling the resolution off the table, Don. And we don't know the fate of this resolution. We know that there are still discussions going on. U.S. could still be expecting a vote. But the intervention from Donald Trump did seem to succeed. How is all of this playing in the White House, Elise? Well, they're being very careful about what they say. I mean, clearly, you know, President-elect Trump has been speaking out about foreign policy issues. There are some officials that say, look, it's unusual, but everything in this campaign has been unusual. Others are a little bit more upset. But from the Israeli point of view, you know, some people are saying, oh, yes, this is unprecedented for President-elect to weigh in. From the Israelis' point of view, they think that by allowing this resolution to pass, the Obama administration was actually tying President-elect Trump's hands for when he comes in to the White House. He has said that he does want to negotiate what he called the ultimate deal between Israelis and Palestinians, and a UN resolution, you know, basically declaring settlements illegal and kind of putting the thumb on the scale of one of the most sensitive issues in that peace negotiations could have affected Donald Trump's leverage with the Israelis or the Palestinians. So they were really grateful for his interference, Don. So let's just for clarification. So what is next? Will there be a vote on the resolution, Elise? And how will the U.S. cast its vote? Well, we don't know if there's going to be a vote. The Arab League, all of the Arab states met today to discuss what was happening. The suspicion is that perhaps they could introduce a text that could be maybe a little less strong, or it could just, you know, fall apart altogether. I suspect that that's probably what will happen. President el-Sisi, who introduced that resolution, if he's not going to give it his full backing, I don't know how it could go ahead. But the U.S. is looking, definitely, Don, to put its finger on the scale before it walks on the door on the peace process. Secretary of State Kerry was expected to lay out his vision for a peace deal. You remember he had those failed peace talks. This administration wanted to say its piece, if you will. Some of it was a parting shot to Prime Minister Netanyahu, who President Obama didn't have a good relationship. And part of it was because this administration was vehemently opposed to settlement. So I don't necessarily know if they're going to have that opportunity, because clearly the Israelis are looking forward to the next administration where they feel Donald Trump will be much more receptive to their concerns. Elise Labott, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Merry Christmas to you, by the way. And I want to bring in Defense Attorney Alan Dershowitz, author of Electoral Dysfunction, a guide for unaroused voters, and CNN Global Affairs analyst Aaron David Miller, Vice President for New Initiatives and a distinguished scholar at the Woodrow Wilson International Center for Scholars. He served both Republican and Democratic Secretaries of State on the Middle East. I'm looking forward to this conversation, so thank you, gentlemen, for coming on this evening. Aaron, I'm going to start with you. We're used to hearing that we have one president at a time. Are you surprised that the president-elect intervened?
I mean, I think it's fair to say, you know, quoting Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, Don, that we're not in Kansas anymore. I mean, I've been through 4 transitions. Republicans to Republicans, Republicans to Democrats, Democrats to Democrats, Democrats to Republicans. And in the last 25 years, I've never experienced anything quite like this. You have a president-elect, not yet inaugurated, intervening in real time, not just with public declarations about an ongoing UN Security Council resolution, but also responding and enlisting the support of foreign leaders. So I think, yeah, in terms of process and structure, this represents an unprecedented change. I think the real question, and we're going to find out 4 weeks from tomorrow, and in the days ahead of that, is whether or not, to what degree this represents a fundamental change in the substance of American policy toward the Middle East.
Alan, why do you say the president-elect had to weigh in on this vote before he took office?
Well, because you have a lame duck president who's trying to tie the hands of his successor. I wrote an article before we knew who was going to be president, addressed to both Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, saying, don't allow the president to tie your hands. Remember, UN resolutions can't be changed. Once the United States does not veto or votes for it, it's there forever, and it makes it much, much harder to have a peace process when the Palestinians believe falsely that they can get a state through the United Nations rather than through direct negotiations. Donald Trump did exactly the right thing. He stood up for himself, and he said, don't tie my hands. I want to make peace. I want to negotiate. The President of the United States is acting very undemocratically in his last days in office. 88 senators told him not to do it. The vast majority of the House of Representatives don't want him to do it. The American public is not in favor of it. He wouldn't have had the guts to do this when he was still running for office. But as a lame duck president, he now feels he can tie the hands, he can get even with Netanyahu, and he can create his own private, personal legacy. But in the end, the legacy will be that he will have made it much more difficult to have a two-state solution and a peaceful negotiation.
Aaron, the same question. Do you think the president-elect had to weigh in on this?
I mean, I think Alan raises some good points, but I don't see it playing out quite that way, Don. I think had this resolution been introduced, and I suspect it still might, although the odds against that, I think, are increasing because President Sisi, frankly, having been caught between the Israelis and the Americans, I think is going to wash his hands of this. I think Alan is right in a sense, but I think this would have played out in a different way. It would not have tied the next administration's hands. What would have happened is the President of the United States would have voted for it, and within minutes or hours of that vote, the President-elect would have disowned it and disavowed it. And when he became president, he would have tried to send an unmistakable message that, in effect, the terms of that resolution did not reflect his policy. And once again, and this is why I think it was a fraud enterprise, once again, we would have sent mixed signals to our allies and our adversaries on what it is American policy actually represents. But I think it was very hard at the 11th hour, and I think Alan is right about this, to try to institute, no matter how frustrated the current president is, to try to institute or implement a significant change in policy.
But let's not be fooled into thinking that this was done by Egypt. The United States is behind this resolution. They are the ones who are pushing it. The Obama administration is pushing it. The Arab countries are reluctant to do this. This is coming from the United States. This is coming directly from the Oval Office and from Secretary Kerry. So let's not think that this was something that the Israelis persuaded the Egyptians not to. The Egyptians couldn't care less. In fact, polls show the Palestinians on the street don't even care very much about this. And one of the reasons it's such a bad resolution at the UN is it encourages BDS, boycott, divestment, and sanction, against products produced in the West Bank. It also states that the boundaries would be the 67 boundaries, which Resolution 242 of the Security Council gave much more flexibility to. This is a very bad resolution, but badly motivated by an outgoing president.
There are those who are not opposed to the resolution and are concerned about the precedent that this sets because of one president at a time. Donald Trump is not the president of the United States yet.
That's true, but the current president shouldn't be tying the hands of the future president in this way. Where I disagree with David is that UN resolutions aren't undoable. Yes, President Trump would get up and say, I don't agree with it, but it would become the Security Council resolution, and no future president can undo that. That's why it would be wrong for this president to try to impose this on future presidents.
Wrong or not, is it his prerogative, Aaron, for him to do this, even if you think it's a bad move?
The current administration?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I mean, I think pressure has been building, momentum has been building in an effort to have some sort of resolution, some sort of speech by the current administration to put its fingerprints on 8 years of failures, frankly, to address the Israeli-Palestinian issue.
Let him make a speech.
Yes, I think that I think it was the president's right to do this. I argued earlier that I think an 11th hour move on settlements, particularly given the language in the first paragraph, which talks about not accepting the legality of Israeli settlements, which raises the whole thorny issue which the last three administrations have sought to dodge. Yeah, I mean, I think in the end, it probably wouldn't have succeeded even if the resolution had passed. I also, though, given the UN's credibility here, I'm not sure this would have had much of an impact, frankly, on the new administration going forward.
It's got to be the last word. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah. Thank you, gentlemen.
Merry Christmas.
Up next,
you.
Donald Trump goes nuclear, tweeting that he wants to strengthen and expand America's nuclear capability.